You know that feeling, right? That quiet, constant hum of anxiety about what's coming next? It's not a panic attack, just this low-grade tension that's always kind of there in the background. Well, today, we're going to pull that feeling apart, piece by piece, with a little help from some ancient Stoic wisdom. Let's jump in. Yeah, this is exactly how it starts. Your day could be going perfectly fine, nothing's on fire, but the second your mind drifts to your job, or a big life decision, or even just what's happening next week, bam, that static of worry just kicks in. We don't know it, and it's so easy to think, oh, there's something wrong with me, I just overthink things. But what if it's not a personal flaw? What if that anxiety isn't just random noise, but a pattern? A predictable one. Turns out, the Stoic philosophers figured this out thousands of years ago. They saw that our fear of the future actually has a structure. And here's the cool part. Once you can see the blueprint of the anxiety, you can start to take it apart. So the first pillar of this whole structure comes from the Roman Stoic philosopher Seneca. And honestly, his insight into how our minds work is just stunningly modern. Just let that sink in for a second. We often suffer more in imagination than in reality. Seneca basically saw that our brains are these incredibly powerful simulators. They can cook up these vivid, painful scenarios that haven't happened and probably will never happen. But the suffering? Oh, that feels 100% real, even when the event is pure fiction. And here's where it gets really costly. We tell ourselves we're just preparing for the worst. But are we really? Or are we just rehearsing the pain over and over? We're paying the emotional price for a failure before it even happens, grieving a loss that isn't real. Our own imagination gets the first punch in long before reality ever does. And that right there is why this is all so incredibly exhausting. Okay, let's move on to the second pillar, and you'll see how this all connects. This idea comes from Epictetus, a philosopher who drew a very sharp and super important line in the sand about what we can actually influence. This right here, this is the absolute core of Stoic practice. On one side, you've got what's truly yours, your opinions, your choices, how you respond to things. That's your territory. And on the other side, pretty much everything else. The final outcome, getting a guarantee, knowing for sure how things will turn out, none of that is fully in our hands. And most of our anxiety comes from us forgetting which side of the line we're on. So here's the big takeaway. The anxiety doesn't happen because we're broken. It happens because we're pouring all our energy into trying to control things we can't. When we demand a specific outcome, when we try to wrestle a guarantee out of an uncertain world, we're literally fighting reality. And that is a stressful fight you just can't win. And this brings us to the third piece of the puzzle, from maybe the most famous Stoic of them all, the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. He really zeroes in on what's driving all this tension. I mean, wow, this is such a brilliant way to reframe the entire problem. We think the problem is out there. The world is just too uncertain. But Marcus Aurelius completely flips it. The problem isn't out there, it's in here. It's our expectation. It's our stubborn demand that the future should be clear and predictable. The anxiety doesn't come from the fog, it comes from being mad that there's fog in the first place. And this is the trap, isn't it? We all fall into it. We think if we just run one more scenario in our head, make another spreadsheet, or just worry a little bit harder, we can somehow think our way to this feeling of absolute safety. But that feeling, it's a total mirage. The future, by its very nature, isn't completely knowable. Demanding that it should be is literally the recipe for creating tension. Okay, so we've got the diagnosis. We suffer in our imagination, we try to control the uncontrollable, and we expect a clarity that's just not possible. A diagnosis is useless without a prescription, right? So what do we actually do about it? Well, the Stoics offer a really powerful, practical shift in how we think. This is the question that fuels the whole engine of anxiety. What will happen? It's like a launch code for our minds, sending us into 1,000 different possible futures, forcing us to fixate on all that stuff we just can't control. It's a question with an infinite number of scary, made-up answers. But now, listen to this. Listen to how everything changes when we ask a different question. What is mine to do right now? See, this question is like an anchor. It just yanks our attention right out of that imaginary, out-of-control future and plants it firmly in the present moment, on the one and only thing that is ours, our very next action. And this is a really important point. The goal isn't to just pretend the future doesn't exist or blow off your responsibilities. No way. You can still see the big mountain you have to climb, but you stop being paralyzed by how huge it is, and instead, you pour all your energy into taking the very next step. The future gets put back where it belongs, and it stops taking over the present moment. So let's make this super practical. Here's a little exercise. First, get really specific. Name the exact thing you're worried about. Step 2, ask that key question. Is this whole thing completely in my control right here, right now? The answer is almost always going to be no. Step 3 is about acceptance. Just consciously recognize that worrying about it adds absolutely zero value. It's just burning fuel for nothing. And finally, step 4, bring all your attention to the smallest, most concrete thing you can do right now to move forward. And let's be crystal clear about this. This is not about sticking your head in the sand and avoiding your problems. It is the exact opposite. It's about using disciplined attention. It's about focusing your valuable mental energy like a laser, only on the things where it can actually make a difference, instead of just scattering it against the walls of a future you can't control. So, as we bring this all together, you can see the Stoic path out of anxiety isn't about getting a crystal ball or magically getting rid of uncertainty. It's about a radical commitment to finding clarity right here in this moment. When it all comes down to it, our fear of the future isn't really about the future. It's a product of these 3 things going on inside of us: the painful stories our imagination creates, our pointless struggle to control outcomes, and, maybe most important of all, where we decide to place our sense of responsibility. You know, the promise of Stoicism isn't that everything's going to be perfect. It doesn't sell you fake optimism. It offers something so much more real, something more durable. Just having the clarity to know the difference between what is your job to do and what just isn't. And that clarity all by itself is a deep, deep source of calm. So I'll leave you with this to think about. We spend so much of our lives chasing certainty, thinking it's the only thing that'll make us feel safe. But what if we've been chasing a ghost this whole time? What if the real path to peace isn't found in knowing the future, but in being crystal clear about our job in the present?